Okay, so we have a Kenwood American style fridge freezer with the ice and water dispenser in the door. If you're wondering whether you've got the same one, there we go, that's the panel on the front. So the problem that we've had is the paddle for the water and ice dispenser. So that's this bit that you normally press your glass against. The paddle snapped in two places. No one has admitted liability for that, but I'm guessing someone was a little bit too rough with it. So that snapped in two places, here and here. So on the back you can see that's part of the hinge mechanism, and then also we've got this little lever that presses against the actuator micro switch there. Now, to replace this, there's no way to replace the panel itself, the paddle rather, because it's fitted in here. So the only reason this paddle came out was because it broke. So to actually buy a new part, you actually need to buy this entire module, which includes the paddle, the micro switch, the LEDs. So that comes as a complete part for around £35 at time of publishing. Since I was going to be taking this out anyway, I've decided to try super glue. So I've glued the two places there. It is working at the moment. Whether it continues to withstand daily usage, we'll find out, but it's working at the moment. But the real reason for making this video is I searched for quite some time for instructions online about how to remove this component, so that I could get in there to try and repair it, and I couldn't find any guides anywhere. So let me take you through this. I started on the inside because I couldn't see any way to get access on the outside here. I started by removing all of this mechanism here, thinking I could get down this way. You can't get that way, you just end up with a blank panel there. So you do have to go in at the front. So the panel that I showed you does have to come off here, and that's not easy. The panel is secured in place with clips, so it pretty much looks like this was meant to go together once and then not come apart again. So you've got two clips on each side and two lugs at the top as well, and you've also got some clips on the bottom which clip into here. I'll come back to that in a second. So with the panel in place, you can't really get anything down the side of it to prise that off. Suction cups may do the job. I don't have any. I only thought about that afterwards. The way that I did it was to prise this panel, which is quite flexible. I managed to get a screwdriver, various other things underneath, prise that down enough so that I could get my hand underneath that panel, behind the panel, and just literally yank that forwards. It took a lot of force to get that out. One of the clips did break, so one of the ones on the side here, I think this one, I've super glued that back. Whether or not that holds, we'll find out. I may end up having to glue the whole panel back in, because I haven't even put it back in yet. The clips might break when I put them back in. So as I say, it looks like it's not an easily repairable fridge, this one, certainly not this part of it anyway. So the order really is, so when I'm putting this back together, this section, this component is going to be sliding in first, then the panel will pop back onto, that section first, then put the tube in, make sure the wire is connected to the panel, then the panel back on. Mention these other clips here, one of these broke as well, super glued that back on. These clips go into the sections here, and you'll see actually that's partially broken as well on here, so that clips in to keep that all together. I don't think that's a disaster. I think that's going to hold in place anyway, but just a warning, try and be careful with that if you can be. I'm not quite sure what I would have done differently to price that off. There are two arrows on the underside of here which actually point you to those clips, but like I say, I don't know how I could have taken them off any differently. Maybe push upwards on the underneath of that panel and then pull this panel off, something like that. This unit is tough. You can get your hand behind this section or something else and it will pop off. What I was trying to do was slide screwdrivers underneath the side sections and prise it off that way. Really what you need to do is get something just behind the middle of it and just pull, or as I say, maybe suction cups would do it. The other thing you need to know is this is the mechanism for the small hatch that opens to allow the ice to drop. You can't remove this part without also moving this as well. Not removing it, you don't have to take it out completely, but you do have to pull it forwards a little bit so that this back section will slide back up under there, or drop out from underneath there. That one's simple enough. You've got two screws here, unscrew both of those, that will come off here. Tight on this side, just wiggle it off, that will come forwards a little bit, just give you enough room to slide this part out from behind here. Okay, so that's where we're up to. Update later when I have attempted to put all of this back together. Our paddle is working with the super glue on it. We'll find out how it looks when we've got it all back together later, or for you, just a couple of seconds. So starting to reassemble now. So to slide this back in comfortably, and I wanted to be careful with it so I didn't break it again. Did have to remove the hatch assembly completely. That was a bit tighter than last time. It turned out, I think, one of the reasons why was it was actually frozen shut here. So this must be quite a strong mechanism to open. I actually think it's heated as well. This did feel warm at one point yesterday. Anyway, so had to pull that out completely. Took quite a bit of a pull to get that out, but now this is sliding back in. So I'll carry on with that. Okay, so that's back in. What we need to do now is make sure we get this pipe sighted correctly so that this drops down and delivers water where we are expecting it. So through the nozzle there. I might just test that before I push the panel on. Make sure we've got that in a decent place. So, to go turn the power back on to the fridge. So I'll do that. Okay, brief moment of panic there. Just tried the paddle, which was working yesterday in its dismantled state, only to get absolutely no response from the unit. Turns out when you've done the power, it would seem, brought the power back on, the fridge is in some kind of lockdown mode until you connect the front panel, and then things come back to life. So just tested that now, so it's working again. I've connected and then disconnected the panel, so got that pipe in the correct place, and we've got the ice dispenser seems to be working correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and try and slot this front panel back on. Wish me luck. Okay, success. So slotted back in here, my super glued clips. There we go. One last push. Yeah, it's all good. Okay. So my super glued clips seem to have done the job. Clipped in both sides, and even the underneath panel has clipped back in. Okay. Everything working. So the way to get the panel back in, I slotted the lugs in on the top first, then just eased it down gently, so both sides together, and then just one swift pop pop all of the clips back in together, and all seems good. So now all we've got to do is hope that the super glue holds and I don't have to do this job again anytime soon. Forgot to say, the underneath of the panel here, this part, there is a screw, just the one on this one side, goes in there. Well, it did go in there. So what I've found when I've reassembled everything, seems like part of the ice dispenser, the hatch mechanism in here. I think there's a white plastic guide on the bottom of that. That seemed to move ever so slightly when I pushed everything back together. So the hole that screw was going into is now no longer lined up with that hole. Everything else seems to be lined up. It's working correctly, so I'm not going to worry about that. But just before you try and dismantle any of this, before you try and pull this down, get this panel out, this screw is a good one to take out. Gives this panel quite a bit more flex there.